I said, Dan's not here. All right, thanks.
Thank you very much, Chief. Oh, absolutely. We'll give you a minute or two if family wants to move on out. We don't have to interrupt anything. Thank you all for coming, though. Alrighty. Let's move on to public comment. Members of the public can address the council once recognized by the chair. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes. Council may extend this time by an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public shall state their name and address for the record. Do we have anyone for public comment? Yes, in the back.
Sandra Clevin, 1011 Hubble Drive. 2 things. First, I would like to invite everybody to the Holly Moose Lodge first annual Veterans Appreciation Day on Saturday, November 11th. There will be a pancake breakfast from 8 a.m. till 10:30 a.m. and then a spaghetti dinner from 4 p.m. till 8 p.m. Meals will be free to all veterans, and it will be $8 per person for everyone else. And you do not have to be a Moose member to attend. There will be a presentation at 10:30 out in front of the Moose, honoring some Moose members that were veterans who are no longer with us. Tom McKinney's going to give a short talk honoring the Moose member who is a veteran of the month, and then there will be a rifle salute by the VFW Post 5587 Honor Guard team. And just to let you know, we have received some generous donations from many of the members of our community to help defray the costs of the veterans' meals. But again, we have lots of raffle items we'll be raffling off that day. You don't have to be in attendance to attend. We'll be doing the raffles at 7:30 at night, but they'll be available all day for you to look and see what they are. And we're going to have a lot of stuff, so I'm hoping everyone can attend. So that was number 1. Number 2, okay, you guys know I haven't been at a couple of the meetings. I have been watching them, though online. So just a couple items. A lot of the council members, you're not talking into the microphones. You're not hearing half of what you're saying. Some of you are very good at it. Some of you are not. This table over here can't hear a word. You guys you can't sit back, lean back in your chair and expect us to hear anything. You have to please sit up and talk into the microphone. Some of the meetings, it's like, whatever. You know, if you're trying to be transparent, oh, well, if you're sitting in the back, leaning way back, then really you're not being transparent because we can't hear you. So that's it. But otherwise, it's been great. I love having that, so when I'm working late or something like that, I can come home and either catch it for a few minutes or just rewatch it. So it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comment? Mr. Love, you're right there in front.
John Love, 200 North Saginaw. I came here in 1989 to the village, and I was impressed with the charm of the village. I saved several buildings that were in serious disrepair, and 2 that were scheduled for demolition by the village. And I want to talk now again about this latest project to destroy a historic waterworks building. Here's what, and I appreciate everybody that allowed me to serve on the Historic Commission. I was just recently appointed. Here's what the ordinance states. Historic preservation is a public purpose of the village. The purpose is to safeguard the heritage of the village and such elements that reflect the village history, and they include engineering aspects. And that's where the waterworks certainly applies because it was an engineering feat. And it's to promote the use of the historic districts for education. So this is an opportunity to educate people beyond just going to a park, just driving by a building. a building that has a great story behind it. And unfortunately, here's what happened. It says here, demolition by neglect. Neglect in maintaining, repairing, and securing resources that results in the deterioration of an exterior feature resource. That's what has taken place. That demolition by neglect has been neglect by the village. And we're very fortunate that we have someone that wants to step in and work to take over some of the responsibility that has been done. The Historic Commission voted unanimously to stop any plans of demolition of this historic property. And I'd like you to comply with this ordinance and the intent of the ordinance. And it says, upon a finding by the commission, a proposed district to require the owner to repair all conditions contributing to demolition by neglect. And if the owner doesn't do it, the commission or agents may enter the property and do that. That's what the ordinance states. So I'd like to have you work with Mr. Hoffman to do phase 1 of this project. And phase 1 is to repair the roof so it doesn't leak. And in order to do that, the floor has to be repaired, secure the windows, and that's phase 1. And then move on to phase 2. But you have to do phase 1 before you can have anyone have any interest in examining it, and looking at it, and looking for phase 2. So we have to do phase 1. And I brought this map right here, and you can see that the Waterworks building is on the map in the historic district. It's right down here. Right there. You can't see it a little bit? Well, I've got the chart here. This way everybody else can see it too. But it's on the radar, and it cannot be just blown off like it's some skating rink or something that you put in a park or something. It has to be maintained. And that's the obligation that you have. And just because nobody did it before doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done now. So I would appreciate you supporting that and complying with this ordinance that is in effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Mr. Feeney?
Pat Feeney, 210 Franklin. Kind of a good news, bad news observation from this afternoon. As I was at Janie's coffee shop today, we observed cars going down the wrong way down Battle Alley. And it became quite apparent to the patrons at Jane's that the reason why is because there's a sign for one of our new businesses. We observed about 4 cars go down the wrong way. And it was quite apparent they were looking at a sign for our new Yellow Dog soap company or shop. I'm not sure exactly what they saw. So I took it upon myself to walk down to the shop, and I want to take this time to apologize to Mr. Walker because he was speaking to one of the employees in there, and I expressed that people were looking at the sign. One actually did a U-turn, looked at the sign, came down the street. It's great to see that they see the new business there, but they're going down the wrong way. Mm-hmm. They should be paying, obviously, attention to the signs, but they're not. They're looking at that sign. And it was, quite obvious that was the reason why. Well, when I informed the employee, they said, well, the owner put it up there. I can't do anything about it. I would just suggest that the owner might be advised, might be good to put it at the other end. And I know there had been some talk of redirecting Battle Alley to a different direction. And I'll just tell you, during the day, you do see a lot of cars go the wrong way down there. And I think it might be a good idea to follow up on that idea of changing the direction on that, because a lot of people blow that off. And it was funny because right after I mentioned this, I walk out the door, and here comes another car right by. Now, mind you, they're not speeding. They're not doing anything. They're actually looking at the shops, which is great. So that's the good news. Bad news is we can't have that happen on a Saturday or during a busy time, or we're going to have some issues there. That's all.
Thank you. Do you have any other further public comment? Mr. Engelberg?
Tony Engelberg, 115 Coggeshall. I apologize for my voice. I've been yelling at kids pretty loudly for the last couple of weeks getting ready for the state playoffs. A couple things I want to talk about, and we'll see if I can get them both in now, if not later. when I came before you guys a month or so ago, whenever it was, to talk about the community center situation, it obviously I probably sounded a bit harsh, and that's just unfortunately my way of communicating. It tends to be very direct and succinct, and I'm not much in for the mushy stuff, as they say. I guess what gets me at this point is that the folks that started the project, Nick Klemp, Terry Connell, Mr. Mishler, myself, and others, Ms. Heupel, we didn't go into it looking to see how much money we could make. We started with a purpose to try and create a place that the community, that's a big word in the word community center, or the words community center, could gather. It was supposed to be a welcoming place for veterans, for seniors, for families, for all of everybody. And unfortunately, it seems that in the last couple of years, that focus may have changed. There's no doubt dealing with the school is not easy. And when you have the school and the village and a director who's not full-time, all trying to communicate, there's no doubt you're going to have problems. So I guess at this point, all I'm going to say again, I'm not going to rehash everything I said last month. You guys have waited 7-ish months past the expiration of our contract to get to where you are tonight. I don't see any harm in opening up the job, taking letters of interest, and seeing if somebody who has 25 to 40 hours a week to devote strictly to this building might come forward. Lots of people work on commissions, whether they're selling cars, whether they're doing real estate. It seems like rather than just pigeonholing yourself into either A, we're going to approve a raise, or I don't know what your other option is, why not take a little bit of extra time? Let's see who's out there that might have a different vision for this place and the time to navigate the village, the school, and the community and get this place back to what it was supposed to be, at least in the opinion of those of us who kind of got it going in the first place. Thank you. Actually, do I have about 30 more seconds?
Yes, you do.
Perfect. Then I'll get the other thing out of the way. We've talked about this for the last couple of years. We're coming up to November 15th, where cars are once again being forced to park on their grass again because of the snow ordinance. Can we please get some hard statistics this year as to how many nights the snow plows and salt trucks actually go through and up and down those streets to find out if maybe it really is time to amend the ordinance and create some kind of a snow emergency policy so that 130 or 135 out of 150 days we don't have cars muddying up their front lawns when we're trying to make Holly seem to be a more beautiful and clean place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mishler?
Joe Mishler, 620 Academy Road. The very first thing I want to say is, yes, I was involved in the creation of the community center, and I totally disagree with Tony. And I think that it's time to move on. Tony Brinker is doing a fine job, and I think that her contract should be extended, and I think we should just move on. The center is evolving. It may not be evolving exactly the way the alleged originator said, but it is evolving, and it is becoming a very vibrant place. I know, I'm in there 2 or 3 days a week, so I see it on quite a regular basis. There's a lot of activity there, which might surprise people. The second thing is that on November 18th, the Holly Area Veterans Resource Center is holding a resource fair. Now, this is open to veterans and the public, and according to Pam Krantz, who's the chairman of our committee, she has about 35 vendors coming in. Now, this is all free. We're not charging anybody anything. I know all the refreshments and all that kind of stuff are being provided by McDonald's, but we have 35 different groups coming in. We have health groups coming in. We have employment groups coming in. We've got all kinds of people who are coming in that could provide people with maybe different kind of options and stuff. And we, ask all of you to come down and see what's going on. Now, on December 7th, which is Pearl Harbor Day, we are having a ceremony in the auditorium at 7:30, the Holly Area Veterans Resource Center. And we are doing two things. We are dedicating a plaque that has all of the recipients of the Carl Richter Award. That award began in 1968 and continues today. There have been 49 recipients, and we are dedicating a plaque. And that plaque will go down by the village office right next to the exemplar picture of Carl Richter. We are also dedicating a plaque to Robert Brumler. Some of you may have known Robert. Great guy. United States World War II Navy veteran. Bob Brumler started the Veterans Day ceremony down at Lakeside Park in 1947, before there was ever a park. Bob Brumler he was the first one in this area to start it, and it started nationally in 1947. And he continued as the MC and project chair until 1995. He was also the MC of that program. And Bob Brumler did one other thing that's probably of really great importance. He created and had published two war memorial books. These are not really histories in the sense of histories, like, what they are is they're a compendium of all those who served starting in World War II, and it has their partial military record. And in the second one, he even went out and collected stories. Now, there are not very many communities that do that. And Bob did it twice. He did it right after the Korean War and then again in 1995. And these two books are wonderful books. You can't get the first one anymore. There are copies available, but not for sale. I think the VFW still has a few of the second book. But we're dedicating a plaque to Bob. Bob was many things in the community. I didn't even know he was one of the first presidents of Kiwanis here in Holly before he went in the Navy. But I want to invite everybody to that event. Come down and help us celebrate all of these wonderful people and help us celebrate Bob Brumler. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mishler. Mr. Smith?
Good evening, everyone. Tim Smith, 14525 North Holly Road. I originally came to this community and started work on the river with Headwater Trails, and we were trying to save the Waterworks building. But because of what happened to me, the last 10 years have been wasted, and I'd like the chance to fix the Holly Waterworks. I think the leaders of this community have a fiduciary responsibility to maintain the buildings, whether you like them or not. It should have been done. It's been neglected. The ordinance says that it should have been taken care of. Time to stop the old ways and rehab and save what we can, especially when people are trying to come together and provide the impetus necessary to save this property. I would appreciate it. I think it would be a great STEM project. And it could be, and I've contacted a professor at Kettering to see what we could do about that. Unfortunately, everybody's in a tight situation right now. But I still think that Waterworks building, with its original belt drive water turbine, is a step in history that isn't likely to repeat itself. You have an opportunity here. Don't waste it. Don't throw it away like it's nothing to be concerned about. An eyesore? Any building can be considered an eyesore if it's not properly maintained. And that was your responsibility of the previous people. This has been going on for 20 years. So I would like to see some effort made to save this. A group of us have put in a substantial effort the last 30 days to see what we could do and come up with projects to save this building. I'd greatly appreciate it if you extended the time, or if nothing else, don't destroy the building. Use the money to fix the roof and the floor, and we can go from there. That at least saves the building for right now and properly boards it up. Attempts have been made to do that in the past by sealing the water tunnel where the water came through. Maybe there's hope But young engineers, young people need to see what the evolution of power was in this country before we all lose track of it and just think it's an iPhone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any further public comment? Yes, sir.
Mark Mesler, 12320 Milford Road. I am the face of Chaos Volleyball. It has come to my attention that a month ago, plus or minus a month ago, there were some statements that may have been, may not have been true, and I'm here to provide factual information as to what Chaos Volleyball is about and what our relationship is with the Carl Richter Community Center. I would like everybody to understand that we are a true nonprofit. My coaches do not get paid. I do not get paid for running the club. We have girls in our club from 8 years old to 17-year-old, okay? We have approximately 60 girls in our club, and about 98% of them are Holly local girls, okay? I've heard the rumor that we host girls from all over the place. Simply not true, all right? The other thing is in that conversation, it's my belief that you can have a community center that functions with organizations like ourselves that pay our just fare and yet give back to the community, okay? And a few ways that we as an organization gives back to the community is it's important for everybody to realize that we're here at the Carl Richter facility quite often, okay? I've chased kids that have broke into this building, out of this building, called the Holly Village Police, chased them across the street, et cetera, et cetera. I found doors in this building that are unlocked and locked those doors, okay? So we're doing our part. We've painted, if you ever have time and you go down to the gym area, we've painted that whole locker room, the whole west side of the facility down there, okay? Repainted all the walls. We're in the process of replacing tiles, et cetera, et cetera. Also, in the course of our events, we host tournaments every Saturdays and Sundays out of this facility. And we also rent the high school. So, therefore, we're renting the high school facilities. We also rent Holly Academy. We're giving back to those facilities by renting those facilities. At every one of those facilities, we have brochures and local community businesses, the restaurants, et cetera, we have their flyers located at our admission tables so that they can be given out. We're giving back to the community again, okay? And I think you can go to Blackthorn, you can go to Andy's, the Moose. Another way that we're giving back is the Moose. We participate in the can drive there. Many of our parents are members of the Moose, which obviously we all realize what an important part the Moose is to this community. Okay, they give a great deal. I had no idea until I got involved with that organization as to exactly what they give back to this community. Also, from my understanding, there was a statement made that we actually have decreased our gym time. Simply untrue. Not a factual statement. Okay, we have actually increased our gym time as it is allowed because of the number of girls that we are bringing in from the community. All right. Also, it's been brought to my attention that there was a statement made that the director, that we did not get along with the director of this facility, nor did we necessarily get along with the Village of Holly. Simply untrue. I think if you talk to anybody within the village staff, you will get a positive feedback about Chaos Volleyball. All right. And I will tell you that I appreciate what Tony Brinker does for the community center. And that comes personally from me. All right. Also, it's important for you to realize that we're making donations to the Holly area schools, which benefits all of us. All right. Also, with that being said, if those girls are spending, our teams spend 3 days a week in our gym and basically Saturdays and Sundays at tournaments. They're in there for 2.5 hours. That means that girls are having positive influences and not out on the streets, and we all know what that leads to. Okay? So, again, I want to clear Chaos Volleyball's name. I want to clear some of the misnomers that necessarily took place a month ago and bring it to your attention that some of that information that you were provided is simply untrue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Do you have any further public comment? No? We'll close public comment for this time, and we'll move to a public hearing, the allocation of community development block grant funds. Guess that would go to you, Mr. Walker.
We have to go into a public hearing, right?
Yes, yeah, you need to open it.
Make the motion that we enter into public hearing for the allocation of community development block grant funds.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. So tonight is the time that's set forth for the public hearing for the allocation of next year's community development block grant funds. This night is set aside solely to receive comment from the public or from those interested organizations that wish to receive funding for council's consideration. So after the public hearing tonight, then at next month's meeting in November will be the time when council will actually designate where those funds would go. At that time, staff will also present recommendations as far as where we feel funds that are earmarked for the village should be used, such as code enforcement or fire department or different aspects like that. But for tonight, it's just for those public service groups. I know that there is at least one with us here tonight, Haya, and we have also had a conversation with representatives from OSHA who are interested in receiving funds. And I'm not sure if anybody is here from OSHA. I am sure somebody is here from OSHA. Is that the same? Okay, so we have documentation from OSHA with their requests that council can take into consideration next month, and then neighbor to neighbor. We'll be glad to hear from. So I turn it over to you for public comment.
We have, please come forth. Oh, they're closer, they beat you.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Monette. I live at 139 North Corbin Street. And I'm here on behalf of Holly Area Youth Assistance. We are once again asking for a part of the CDGB funds. As you know, we've been in this community around 55 years now. What we do is to help the children, the needy children, within the school district of Holly. Just to quickly, some of the projects that we do in the community, most people know us by the Jacobson Quinn Toy Project. We also do camp every year. We have a musical instrument program. We do school supplies every year. We have skill building, which is one of our most popular. We've put out thousands of dollars this year just in skill building for children to do the sports. We were able to take it to even driver's training now this year, which is a tremendous help for the families in the area. Normally, I don't do the talking for Haya, but our president is in Florida right now, so it kind of falls onto me. So, Linda, do you have anything to add?
This would like to be reconsidered for the next.
Yes, please, we beg you to reconsider us for the next CDGB funding.
All right, thank you. Neighbor to neighbor.
I'm Joan Wolf. I live at 11021 Eagle Road in Davisburg.
And I'm Cheryl Schaefer, 10317 Radley Lake Road in Davisburg.
Neighbor for Neighbor is a nonprofit. We service almost 1,000 people a year. We have a clothing, we have a food, and we serve a lot of the village for water, to pay the water bill, to pay the DTE bill, to pay the consumer bill. And Cheryl is our treasurer, so she can kind of tell you how much money we fork out. We have never asked the village for money before, and we're asking tonight.
Currently, once again, as Joan had indicated, we have 335 households serving 945 individuals at this time. Out of that, 93 families of 242 family members are in the village. We have spent this year alone through September 30th almost $14,000 in financial assistance, of which almost $2,500 was to the recipients in the village. And over 50% was just in water shutoff assistance. What we do is we give up a portion up to typically $200 for each recipient that comes in that needs financial assistance for either rent, evictions, utility shutoffs. We have also provided Easter baskets. We're putting together Thanksgiving baskets this year. We do a Christmas store every year. And with that being said, we also started a website recently. So people can go onto our website, they can see what we offer. And with that being said, the pantry is growing, which is wonderful because every single one of us, it's 100% volunteer. We're not taking a salary. Joan's there. I mean, it's literally become her full-time job, bless her heart. The thing about it is we don't want to see a child go hungry. We don't want to see anybody be cold. So anybody who comes into the pantry gets free food. Even if they're coming in for financial assistance, we'll ask them, would you like food? We'd rather put food before them so that they have the extra money to pay the bills. We're simply asking, guys, as the numbers continue to grow and the expenses continue to grow, we're asking the Village of Holly to please consider us for CDBG funding. Once again, we've never asked before. And I know we do, our recipients, we always ask them who referred you. And a lot of people in the Village of Holly have referred them to us. So we would honestly really appreciate anything you can do for us.
Yeah, and eventually, it gets expensive. Food is expensive. Eventually, we run out of money. So we have come tonight to ask for money from Village. So
thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak? Mr. Mishler?
Is there an application process?
Well, so this actually is the application process. You
Okay. I wasn't really sure because it sounded like they all filled out applications.
Yeah.
Joe Mishler, 620 Academy Road. On behalf of the Holly Area Veterans Resource Center, we would like to ask for some of this money. As you know, we do a lot of work with all kinds of veterans. We've helped homeless veterans. Recently, we've been providing transportation for several veterans back and forth to Ann Arbor. We've helped widows in the community. We've gotten people jobs. We've got people, as you know, our outreach with Oakland County in their veterans filing for claims has been exceedingly successful. We have a lot of people who are coming through the center, and we would request funds for programming. We have a number of programs we would like to do through the course of the year, and we don't want to run out the community every 5 minutes and beg for money. And it would really be helpful if we were to get some of this funding. And I would be more than happy to put in that in the form of writing so you get a little better idea. So
thank you, Mr.
We appreciate it.
Do we have anyone further? No? We'll close the public hearing at this time. Resume our regular agenda. On to old business, of which we have...
We need a motion to exit public
I'm
hearing.
sorry. We have to motion to exit out.
I'd like to make the motion to exit public hearing at this time.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we can move on to old business, of which we have none. New business, item number 1, consideration of the purchase of a five-yard dump truck.
Good evening, Brian Clausen, Village of Holly DPW Director. During the last budget process, we budgeted for a new 5-yard dump truck to replace one of the existing 3. I believe their ages are 13, 16, and 19 years old. Although they have low miles on them, we looked at them, see if they could rehab. The recommendation from the contractor that does the rehab was you would get more longevity out of a new truck than you would trying to put good money towards a bad truck. So I checked around with several different municipalities in different ways. The state bid price came through for the chassis, and then Truck and Trailer Specialties several years ago with the City of Rochester. City of Rochester created where they went out and got bids for all kinds of services and goods, and then in the last part of that, they were able to, those prices were held good for any other community, so it was like a low bid application. So several communities around this area use it. Wixom, Milford, I know for sure use it. So we use them, and Truck and Trailer Specialties out of Howell came back with a price for the truck. They both came in under budget, not by much, and I was surprised at how much the cost was. We took one option out of it because we're trying to try to get a multi-use piece of equipment. When we bought the new backhoe several years ago, we got rid of the road grader. So the thought was we could get an oscillating blade underneath the truck. The cost of that was a little more than I anticipated, so we removed that option, but this will give us more efficiency with the wider blade for doing some of the Saginaw, Maple, some of those streets. We're going from a 10-foot blade to a 12-foot blade, so we'll have some cost savings there and time-wise and overtime. The pre-wet system during cold weather is updated, so that'll be more efficient. The controls are more efficient, easier to operate for the driver. So I'm going to make a recommendation that we purchase the truck and chassis through Freightliner, and then Truck and Trailer Specialties does the equipment. We budgeted $165,000, and it came in at $164,400 and some change.
$492.
Yeah. So.
But under budget.
Yeah.
Think
any questions? Any more questions?
No, I think I think we went through this at the budget.
Yeah, we went through it.
This was good at
I got
the
one.
budget meetings.
What year's the one that we're getting?
Brand new truck, isn't it?
Yeah, brand new truck.
New,
yes.
2000.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be a 2018.
18?
Yes.
Okay.
We went over this in our budget meeting earlier in the year, so I guess it's just rehashing an old one. So I'll make the motion that we approve the purchase of the chassis from Wolverine Truck for $89,191, and then the equipment from Truck and Trailer Specialties for $75,301.
I second that.
roll call.
Alsop.
Yes.
Kirkshank.
Yes.
Heupel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes. On to new business item number 2, the Waterworks Building Report. Mr. Hoffman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hoffman, if I can, before you
Sure.
get started, just for a little clarification, so information that's not correct doesn't get read into the record again and again, and I think it will assist the presenters. So the historic district in the village of Holly, as you know, is an opt-in, or was an opt-in when it was originally set up, which means individual properties could decide whether or not to be included in the historic district. So just because a property is within a proposed area, such as on the map that Mr. Love displayed, doesn't mean that every property or every building within that district is actually part of the historic district, because they're not a voluntarily opted-in property. Now, currently, the Historic District Commission, they are studying a proposal, and they are preparing to make a recommendation to council to perhaps move from that voluntary opt-in type of scenario to a scenario in which, in Mr. Love's illustration, would have been correct, in that every property within the boundaries of the map that were mapped out would be included in the historic district. Now, some of those buildings within the district, they may be non-contributing, which means they may actually not add to historic character of the district, and so they wouldn't be necessarily historic, but they would still be within that historic district. And so I lay all of that out by way of explanation, because the Waterworks building itself is not a designated building. So it's within the mapped area, and it could have been a designated building, and therefore part of the historic district and bound by the ordinance that Mr. Love noted. However, the particular building is not, one of the designated buildings is not bound by that ordinance. So just by way of clarification, council, of course, can still do whatever you choose is appropriate, but I just wanted to get that fact out so that when you're making your consideration, you have the right information.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Village Council for their consideration approximately a month ago to allow me to make a proposal to all of you to save the Waterworks building. I also want to thank Jerry Walker for the time he gave me, Brian Klassen for the time that he let us enter the building. I want to thank Oakland County, Ron Campbell and Joe Frost with the Historic Preservation Program. I want to thank George Cullis for all the help he's given me, and Sue Julian and her husband Chuck, and all the other people who have came forward to support this effort to save this. At the last meeting, you all pointed out to me that you'd like to find somebody to take the lead and save this building. And I'm telling you that I'm here to help do that with everybody else's help. One person can't do it. Before I get to the plan, on the very last page of the report I gave you, I drew a pie chart. And it lists all the components of Holly and why Holly is successful. And it's like almost a three-legged stool. If you take one of the legs off, Holly will fail. But if you get all these people pulling in the right direction, we can succeed at everything. And I believe everything in life is an evolution. It continually evolves. Holly's been evolving for a long, long time. There will never be a last chapter written on Holly because it keeps evolving. And we've had our ups and downs, but together we can accomplish a lot of things. The plan I propose, and first of all, I want to point out that anybody and everybody, almost everybody, has said that this building has historical significance. I talked to Bob Donahue, he used to be the head of Oakland County Main Street, and he agreed that it's historically significant. Everybody at Oakland County that I've dealt with agreed this is historically significant. And you can see from the poster I bought, and I had the wrong date on there, which probably makes it more significant. And Joe Mishler pointed out to me that I made the building not as old as, or the waterworks system as old as it should be. That in itself makes it historic, and the fact that the equipment is there. Now, my proposal is, in phase one, we need to secure the building. We need to put a new roof on it. We need to redo most of the floor on the second floor. We need a new rubber roof on it. And I've taken bids for that, and it's approximately $20,000. I am willing to put my money where my mouth is, and I'll ante up a certain amount of money. I have promises from some business people in the community to ante up another $2,000. So my proposal is that you have allotted or budgeted $25,000 to demolish this. And so what I'm suggesting is you allocate $15,000 of it to start this process. And in 90 days, I'll have a new roof on that, and I'll secure the building. And above and beyond the $15,000, I will go out and raise the money. And for every dollar I raise, I'm proposing that you match it with $1 up to your allocated $25,000. So if I raise $10,000, I'm asking you to allocate the other $10,000. I polled everybody on the council, and I appreciate the time you all gave me. And I asked everyone what would they like to see this building used as when we save it. And everyone, it was unanimous, said some kind of educational purpose. And where would it be more educational than have that equipment in one of the original buildings? I mean, maybe it's not the first building, but it's definitely an old building. It was definitely used for the waterworks, and it's like a gateway to the south end of the village. That would be the most appropriate place to educate young people. And it's perfect because it's in a park. It's at the headwaters of the Shiawassee River. And that in itself will help us obtain grant money. Also, we know that the DDA, which I am a member, is setting up a 501c3 and which would allow people that donate money. We can do this whole process through the DDA. I don't want to handle any of the money. I want the village to handle the money, pay the bills. And this would allow people who are willing to donate money to at least get a legal tax deduction for their efforts. So I'm, again, trying to include your input in here because we need everybody's input. And again, this will keep evolving. You know, somebody may come up from the council, from the public, anywhere with an idea that might enhance the ideas that we've already came forward with. I think there's a few qualities to good leadership. One of them is a vision. You have to have a vision, and you have to convey that vision to somebody else. So I'm asking all of you to join me in this vision. We can save something. We can create an incredible asset for the community. You know, it's easy to tear stuff down, but it's a little tougher and a little more time-consuming, a little more effort to build something up. And, you know, there's a lot of people in life, and we meet them every day, that say, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if this? You know what? I don't want to deal with the what-ifers. I want to deal and go through life and saying, why not? Why can't we do this? Because we can, you know, but it's going to take a combined effort. I think the other essential ingredient to leadership is courage. You have to have courage to put your vision forward, and you have to go for it, and you have to stand up and be counted. And you know, when it's all said and done, what will the true measure of our success be in life? And the answer is that we left this place better than we found it. So I'm here to ask you to join with me, join with the public, and make this a success. And again, I'm willing to take the lead, but I need your help. I thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, one more thing. I do want to pass another thing out. These are, this is a picture of a structure in downtown Milford. They received a $60,000 grant to tear it down. Well, then somebody came forward, and I'm not sure who it is. You guys want to pass this around? First page shows what it looks like, and that's not even really a fair description because it was all boarded up and was protected with a chain link fence with barbed wire on top. Well, the community came together and built this incredible, first of all, they saved the building. And I'm not sure exactly what Henry Ford had to do with it, but I think it was one of his power plants that he used to build around the country. But they all came together and they saved this structure. It is the most incredible thing I have ever seen. And I don't know if it was in worse shape or not, but you know what? The community came together. And if anybody ever suggested, now I talked to Ann, their DDA director over there, and she said if anybody ever suggests tearing that down now, we'd probably lynch them. But we can do so many things together, and I'm just asking for the opportunity. I'm here to do what you initially asked, even though it might have been months ago, but I'm here to make it work with your help. And I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Ms. Julian? Please.
Sue Julian, 3505 Radley Lake Road. I am handing out what is admittedly an extremely difficult to imagine vision for the Waterworks building. But this was produced over 15 years ago. And they took the exact shape of the building and the foundation that was there and came up with a drawing of what could be done that would be beautiful in Holly. The question is it going to be a fading vision, or is it going to become sharper a reality? And I hope that you will choose the former. Thank you.
I see one more thing. I don't know if I mentioned it. If I did, I apologize. If we can come to some kind of agreement, I guarantee you I will have a new roof on that in 90 days and a new floor, and the building will be buttoned up for the winter, and then we'll move on to the next phase of this. Thank you.
Mr. Mishler?
Joe Mishler, 620 Academy Road. Now that I know my address. I was talking to Ryan Scheel Saturday or Sunday, and something occurred to me in the conversation that we had. That was, I guess I knew all of this, but I didn't really put it together. In 1843, that mill pond was created. His ancestors did that, Ira Alger. Now, what's important to me is, okay, the building might not be original. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't, because I don't think anybody sitting here knows that question. And I know Brad Rebar and I have been over the maps, and we've been over all the information, and we have it down to a set period of time, but we're not willing to make a bet on it because the records are a little skimpy. But this is a prime opportunity to take the founding ground of this village and make it into something that would be educational, that would preserve and protect the heritage of our community. We seem to have a rare opportunity here, because if what I understand about the equipment is true, then we have a rare opportunity. I would rather see us fix the building and make it into something, I don't know if it's her vision, somebody's vision, and I would like to see that become the center and not tear the equipment out. Because I think if you tear the equipment out, then it loses a lot in translation. And if you put it someplace else, oh yeah, that's a wheel. Okay. But if it's right where it was to begin with, and you've done all your work, you've gotten rid of the mold, you've gotten rid of all the nastiness, and you fixed it up, then I think you have something that's really valuable, because that is the site of the original trace. That is the site of the original mill. And I think that's, in terms of, if we want to call ourselves Historic Holly, you don't get any more historic around here than that. And I'm not talking about the township. I'm talking about the village, because there's more historic sites out there too. But I'm talking about the village. It's where the village started. And as Bob Alsop said, there's never going to be an ending chapter. And when I look at the history of the mill pond, there's always a different chapter. There's always another company being added. There's a waterworks building being added. There's an electric company being added. There was all that stuff being added, and railroad tracks that ran to it, and a trestle bridge, and I don't know what else. But it's where our heritage begins, in the village of Holly. And if we are truly a historic community, then let's go out and be one. Let's do something with that building and make it viable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishler. Yes, ma'am. You're up next, Mr. Cullis.
Lori Lacey, 818 East Maple. I was looking at this for the potential phases, and one thing that has gotten in my mind is the second phase is the exterior for the masonry and stabilization. I'm not, one that builds anything, but I would think that if they put on a new roof and the flooring, they'd have to have a stabilization first before they do all that, because if they lift it or if it starts going, the masonry, flooring and stuff like that on the sides, then that's just a waste of money. So that's what I'd like to know. If these different phases, I think there's certain phases that should come first if it was to come to pass. But I would rather just see the machinery put out in the pavilion, all the information. That's my idea, but that's just mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cullis.
George Cullis, 601 East Maple Street. I have worked with Bob over the last week, and Mr. Smith made reference earlier tonight to trying to contact somebody at Kettering. And we had been doing that. We hadn't gotten any answers. So yesterday I drove up to Kettering, and I went to the administration building, and I got some direction, and I met with a gentleman named Greg Miller. Now, one of the concerns was we all wanted to see an educational project or an educational purpose for this building. Mr. Miller came out this afternoon, and he met with Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Clausen and I at the location, and he is the archivist for Kettering University, and they work together with the students on what is known as a capstone program. I had never heard of that, but Mr. Walker apparently participated in that when he went through his college as well. They came out this afternoon, looked at the building, and they came out because, quite frankly, yesterday I said tomorrow night's the night that the board's going to decide, one way or the other. And he came out tonight, and he was very interested in the building, thought the building had potential for some programs. They have done some programming with some other buildings where they have facilitated and created the ability to draw electricity from them and service a small area, whether it be the downtown lights or something, parks or something like that. And what he said to us tonight was that he would need about 2 weeks, but he would like to bring a group of engineers down to look at the building. He said there was a gentleman at U of M, which, as you know, is kind of across the street from Kettering, up in Flint. And he said, I'd like to put a team of these guys together. It would probably take us a couple of weeks to a month, but he said, I think we've got something here that we could work with. And as you know, water is a big issue all around the country, but especially in Flint. And their engineers, they're focusing on some of these projects right now. So there is an interest out there. There is a cause. I know that we've been looking at this for a long time. I sat on the council myself as we put these requests out, and we got no response. But I also know I shared a council seat with Mr. Rankin over here, and we turned our decision around on what was known as the Gray Lady, and that produced something that we can all be proud of today. So we have an opportunity here. Does it sound ridiculous to ask for yet another stay? When you compare it to 20 years we've been doing this, I think this is an opportunity to put Holly on the map in a way that could be very, very unique. The other thing that I was going to mention is when I sat on the council and we tried to find somebody a few years ago, remember where the economy was. A lot of things are happening. A lot of new things are coming forward. So I think we're looking at a time now where money's more available. Grant programs tie in with these capstone projects through the schools. We all know the connection that Kettering has up there. And I think it would behoove us to take that opportunity to take the next step and see what's there. And Mr. Miller, you can check him out at Kettering, said he would need 2 weeks, maybe a month, to bring all these people together, come down and take a look at it. So that's the educational side of this connection for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cullis. Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Look at there, I got up without having to shift my body. I learned something, and I just wanted to, I have a few little things to say, and I want to make sure I talk on this, because when everybody stands up here and they go over here, you can't hear you back there, can you? So I learned something really insignificant. Going through my files, I'm doing a lot of purging, and about 10 years ago, there was an article and a story about a Holly meeting where I guess it was pretty dramatic. I wasn't there, but the article mentioned people that attend meetings on a regular basis are called gadflies. So I think I have a new title. Also, Bob Brumler was also probably the first food bank. Do you remember Can Do? Yes. Okay. What else did I want to say? I'm so excited about this. I don't know if my heart can stand it. This is great. I hope you guys get behind this, and I would in any way that I can, Mr. Hoffman. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Mr. Engelberg.
See how my voice can hold up here. I've gone back and forth on this from the brief time that I served on the Parks Commission when we were talking about it to just council meetings and whatnot. At one time, I was adamant to just tear the bleeping thing down because, I'm somebody who, because of where my family lives and where my work is, I pass that building every single day, sometimes twice a day. It is the first thing I see that lets me know I'm back in Holly. And as it is now, let's face it, it's shameful. But what I see now is, if you look on the north, if you look at the gateways to our community, on Grange Hall, you come in on one side. Coming from Fenton, we still got some work to do. Coming from the other direction, okay, it may not be the greatest looking thing in the world, but you got a brand new tire manufacturer coming in and cleaning up a building. You look on the north end of town, and 6 months ago you saw a barn that looks like it was about ready to fall down the next time we had a 20-mile-an-hour wind. And Mr. Cullis rolled up his sleeves and did what I would say to you that most people thought was unthinkable. And you now have a barn that is raised up, getting cleaned up, and in whatever the given period of time is, when the project is done, you're going to have something you can be proud of. And so folks coming from that end of town, that's going to be one of the first things they see. I'm listening to the folks that are speaking tonight, whether it be Mr. Love, Mr. Mishler, Mr. Cullis, Mr. Hoffman, and others. These are guys who I might not always agree with on some things, but they typically don't get behind something without following through on it. And so I would say to you, if Mr. Mishler, Mr. Cullis, Mr. Love, and Mr. Hoffman are standing here telling you they've got a plan and they've got a way to deal with it, I am not one for kicking the can down the road normally, but I think it's time we at least walk a little bit before we kick again and see where we can go. I don't know what the use for the building would be once we got it cleaned up, but if they're telling us there's a way we can fix it, and if you guys decide that fixing it is what you want to do, then from a standpoint of believing it will get done, I'll put my faith in these people. So that's all.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Linda Smith, and I live in the township at 6190 East Holly Road, but I'm president of the Holly Historical Society, which is at 306 South Saginaw. I agree with what Joe said. That site has a lot of history. We could build on it after dealing with this building. It could be the opposite of what the barn is at the other end of town. So I'd like to see it saved.
Thank you. Have any further comment? Yes, sir.
Oh, John, go ahead. Just raise your hand.
Oh, my turn?
It's your turn. The chair recognizes.
Hi. We've talked about it for quite a few years. I've tried to do something about it. I appreciate Hoffman doing it. And, you know, he has great credibility, too. And it's a no-brainer. Absolutely no-brainer. Destruction is destruction. And that's not what we need to be. And I went to court twice on the mill and his house over here to stop it. They're classic. The proportions are great. This thing is, if you go to Waterworks Park, you don't want to go to Waterworks Park and see some trees. You want to go and see the waterworks. So this is a great opportunity for us. Let's do it. And let's do it now instead of, let's study it 50 more times. All we have to do is get the roof on it and get it dried out, and then we can go work on the details. And as far as the structure, it's been there for 100 years. It's going to be there for another one. I also talked to somebody that knew somebody that ran into the building at 100 miles an hour in a car and was killed. And it's still there. So, and you look at how thick the walls are. They're 1.5 feet. It's not some piece of house that has, like one house that I got where it was just built on the ground.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you, John, and thank everybody else for their comments. And I want to thank Joe Mishler, too. And I want to echo what he said about if you're going to teach a kid something, where is the best place to teach them? Where there's a true representation of what you're doing. And I believe that in some fashion we can get that equipment working again. It's not going to provide water to the community, even if you pump it back into the river. But if a kid goes in there, and everybody loves water, and they see that rushing water through there, it's turning the turbine and it's turning the shaft, and one of those gears is wood, which is incredible in itself. And if it turns everything else, and maybe even generate electricity a little bit, even if you could light some lights in the park, I think this is we have the greatest potential. And I'm not here to ask you for 2 more weeks, because we can multitask. Not as well as women, but we can multitask. So as George continues to pursue the avenue with Kettering University, and I met with them today with George, and the guy, was pretty impressed with the place, especially with the potential, and he even went down the basement. I don't know if any of you have been down there. Well, there's 2 less steps because he fell through them, but he's okay. But this is a great thing we can do together, and I thank you again. Thanks, Joe.
Mr. Hoffman.
Mr. Walker, can we legally turn the money over to Mr. Hoffman from demolition to start on that place?
Well, certainly council can allocate funds if they wish to as a subcommittee of the council or workforce. I think that can be done. Money has not been budgeted this year. The cost of $20,000 to $25,000 was a rough number that was talked about as a possible cost for demolition. So if council should choose to go down that avenue, it will require a second motion in order to allocate money so that the treasurer can disperse money for that. So yeah, I think it's in the realm of possibility if that's what council chooses.
Would we have to have a written contract by Mr. Hoffman in order to give that money to him?
Well, I'm not sure.
Mr. Hoffman had stated that he didn't want any money. He wanted the village.
I'm not asking anybody to give me anything. I want to go get some bids. I want to do what needs to be done. I'll have a roof on there in 90 days. I want, maybe through the DDA, and I was talking to Jerry earlier, and a 501c3 should be up and running in a short period of time. And if we can funnel it through that so people who donate money can donate it to the DDA, they can get their tax deduction. We'll submit the bills like we do for anything else, and you would have to approve them and then pay them. You know what the budgeted item would be, the $15,000, unless I raise more, and if you agree to match it up to the 25. Yeah, I'm not asking for any money.
But down the road, you're going to need money.
Well,
yeah, once.
Yeah. No, so I think what Mr. Hoffman is stating, you can correct me if I'm wrong again, but I think what Mr. Hoffman is stating is that he's asking for $15,000 up front, and so if council decides to go down that route, you will need to do a separate motion to allocate up to $15,000 for this initial phase, and then as his group continues on in the process and they fundraise, that for every dollar they fundraise, that the village will match an additional up to $10,000.
More.
But that's
More.
why I asked him.
Right.
More, yes.
Still 15,000's coming out of it.
Well, potentially 25,000.
If I can raise the additional 10, and I would like everything funneled through the DDA so the village can follow whatever procurement policy you have, so we have all the checks and balances, because I want everything to be open, honest, and transparent. I mean, we have to do it that way. And we have to have a proper accounting of everything. I don't want any money. I just want you guys to help me. And that's how you could help me.
I understand.
I know.
Okay,
Thanks.
so again, though, as the chief financial officer, just so you understand, the DDA does not have that money.
Correct.
So that any money allocated initially would come from the village's general fund, from the fund balance. And so that's where it would come from. And then as the 501c3 is completed, then that would allow for fundraising, and any donations then could funnel through that 501c3 if it were approved by the DDA board, which probably Mr. Hoffman is very influential on that board also. So probably would occur. But while staff will carry out anything that council wants to have done, just be cognizant of this also, that once we start down this road, there's no turning back. I mean, if we put $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 into the building, there's no turning back. That it's going to have to be finished and continued. Or you talk about squandering resources, that would be the ultimate example of squandering resources.
And Mr. Walker, another thing, the demolition would have come out of the general fund also, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we have to step back and remind a few things that happened here. Mr. Hoffman, you said you got a quote for $15,000 for the roof. Is there a printable quote that we can see on that?
I'd be happy to get it. And actually, what I want to do, this is just one contractor I called. I'd like to get some bids. I don't want to just give it to some guy who gave me a price. And altogether, it's probably about $20,000 with the rubber roof.
So, okay. Another part of it is we have gotten quotes in the past because we wanted to initially start fixing this up. Director Clausen got a few quotes, and they were, what was the range, just to kind of remind us of that?
They were 6 figures.
Yeah.
Floor and the roof was around $90,000.
A floor and a roof, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
we've got
Councilor Rankin and I also over the summer got a committee together for Waterworks building. All of those attendees, and we sourced different citizens to get involved, which included Brad Rebar. There was not one person on that committee that thought the building was worth saving. There's long-term effects too that we have to think about as well. This is just a start. So, the initial up to $25,000, which the quotes we were getting were in the $13,000 to $14,000 range, but saying there's an asterisk on some sort of the things because it is so historical, the concrete's so thick, and things like that. So the demo, potentially could be under $20,000 and be done. What the vision of the Parks Committee after that, it would go back to them initially, but everybody wanted the educational. So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all these beautiful things about the historic parts of, not necessarily the building, but the turbine, which there is still parts that are being made today for that turbine. Mm-hmm. The intention of the Waterworks, committee that we were on, and I believe the Parks too, is to have something functioning at that time. So I don't think that there's anything that was presented tonight that would not have an impact to our youth for education, for the beautification of the park, that would not happen if the building was gone and we erected something in that place. We also have to talk about long term. So we're talking about the long term vision of this. It's going to cost a lot more money to maintain this. And in a village that has a tipped scale where we now have more retirement employees drawing on our system than we do employees, we have a MER system that is, essentially getting the money out of our budgeting and making it harder to make decisions. I don't see a long-term plan for this. I'm still on board with demolition.
First of all, I've been in the construction business for 40 years. I don't know where the price came from for 90 grand, and it could have included a lot of other things than what I'm getting a price for. I got a price from a licensed contractor who's probably been in business for 30 or 40 years. The village, and I know that all governments are suffering because of not enough money, but we have enough money to spend up to $25,000 to tear it down. We have the money to build a pavilion over what's there, but you already have a structure that's not going to take that much to fix. I mean, I'm putting my name out here, and I've done some great things in the village. I've rehabbed a couple buildings. I do what I say I'm going to do, and I do everything first class. I don't cut corners on anything, and I think it would be just a sad day to tear that down. There's nothing more historic than having the contents in a historic building. I mean, a kid's going to walk up there and he's going to see a bunch of metal, but if he sees that this is where the equipment is, this is where the power is, I can look down here through the floor, because we'll put a glass floor in an area, rail it off. He can look down there, see the water coming through, turn in the propeller down there that turns the turbine above it, and that turns the long shaft that generates the electricity or the water power. There's not a better teaching example, as Joe has already stated. It's the way to go. I really believe it's the way to go. And again, we can go through with the what ifs and the what ifs, but I guess nothing changes if nothing changes. And you know what? Here's an opportunity. Thank you.
Any other council comments on this? I'd like to hear what you have to say, Mr. Rankin. You've been kicking this around for a while, more than most of us.
Yeah, we really have. We've been kicking this around way too long.
20, 30 years.
Well, yeah. And as long as I've been involved with the village, and Parks was how I got involved with the village, and it's been 8 or 9 years now, 7 or 8, I forget.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I really want to hear what you have to say.
As much as it sounds, as much as I love the idea, I'm still on board with demolition because of a lot of the reasons Dave brought up. The long-term commitment of funds is, I don't think it's a wise use of our funds.
But we're still going to waste them to tear it down.
But that's going to be the end of it. It's not going to go on forever. We're not going to spend all that money every year maintaining the building, and we're going to. So we've got 2 quotes here. We've got a quote for 15. We've got a quote for 90. I don't know how to reconcile those two.
Yeah, Bob, bring us quotes in writing.
I wanted to say one thing about something that Mr. Huffman said, that a sign of a leader is to show courage. And it takes a lot of courage to say that I want it demolished. I've lived here my whole life. I love Holly. But we've been dealing with this problem over and over. I'd like to see the internal mechanisms saved and become an educational, but the building itself, I think we need to be strong. We already went through the pros and cons of saving it or demolishing it. We had decided that demolishment was where we should go. Now we have someone coming at the last minute to save it, but
with not a true plan.
Yeah.
Something that's just going to put a roof on there.
Or to give 30 more days, 90 more days.
I think it's more than just slapping a roof on there and putting the floor in there. Looks like he has more of a plan than that down the road.
I agree. He does.
So it's not just slapping a roof on there and walking away. And I know
that's the initial investment, though. Yes.
That's the initial investment.
And then there's more.
But with what Mr. Hoffman has done in the past, let that dictate to you what he is willing to do with this building here.
Well, I agree with that, but a lot of that was with his own funding too. We're talking about fiduciary responsibility. That's been thrown around a lot. Our job as council members is to make sure that we spend the money wisely and balance everything together.
Yes,
and like I said, everything that was mentioned
this,
here
but
about
my thing is, like Joe said, my ancestors built that. Not that particular building. No.
Well, then keep it to the building, because that's what we're discussing.
But I'd like to save that so that we can have something there, like most of the public has stated, that we have a visual thing that's there, that's that can visually see.
We can have that without
Right,
that building.
That's the intent of the Parks Committee and the secondary committee after it's demoed, is to make sure that we pay homage to all of that and make sure that we use that education with signs. And we could even possibly have the Leffel turbine working in the river. I could care less on how that stuff is laid out, the details. But the intent is to keep that historical significance there while improving the visuals of it.
I guess my thing is like what, I forget who mentioned it, but like within the building itself, so that they can see where it was within the building.
You have something to add, Mr. Hoffman?
Mr. President, if I
yes,
could
sir,
interrupt
please.
briefly. I know in the past, in the not too recent past, you changed the rules of procedure and how you conduct the meeting, and you can conduct the meeting how you wish. It's never a good idea, in my opinion, to have banter back and forth between council and audience. You open it up for public comment, you receive public comment. What tends to happen as I sit through a lot of these meetings is, as everyone speaks, you're going to have another
rebuttal, and
and this can go on forever. So I would just suggest that you come to some agreement in terms of how the rest of this discussion will proceed. I think it's now at council comment and decision, and then proceed with that.
Yeah, I believe that's where we're at. So if we're gonna end it, Bob. We're gonna bring it back to council. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we continue with the plan of demolition.
Support.
We're gonna need a roll call.
Kirkshank.
Yes.
Heifel.
Yes.
Shield.
No.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
No.
Perkins.
No.
What do we do in a split vote?
Well, so at this point, the motion fails, and certainly the attorney can take over any time. So a alternate motion could be made, or it would just linger with no action moving forward.
That is exactly the effect of that vote. So those are the options.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Mr. Hoffman didn't hear what you had said about the options.
I'll get a little closer to the microphone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. So in the event of a tie vote, there are really two options. An alternate motion could be made, or if no motion were made and no action is taken, then nothing would move forward on the project regarding restoration or demolition.
I don't see an alternate motion we can make.
I mean, if somebody makes a motion to save it, then it's going to just be.
It apparently has to go to the next meeting when we have a full.
Deb would be the deciding vote.
I'll make the motion to give Mr. Hoffman more time, have him come up to council with better plans, estimates of what he's going to do, and we'll make a decision then.
Support.
Roll call.
Heifel.
No.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
No.
Alsop.
Yes.
Kirkshank.
No.
Perkins.
Yes.
Motion fails. You, as far as tonight is concerned, it's a stalemate.
It's a wash.
So would council like this carried on the very next agenda in 2 weeks, which would normally be a study session?
Yes,
Well,
and then we could have.
it's only one November
in fact,
meeting.
because we have one meeting in November,
We have one, yeah.
it will be on the November agenda.
Okay.
All right.
Move on to reports, Mr. Manager.
Certainly, and just real briefly. So the yellow dog sign that Mr. Feeney spoke about previously, that has already been addressed.
Thank you.
In fact, when I was in that business, we were in the process of talking about that. Myself and DDA Director Hughes have been talking about alternate signage, not just for Yellow Dog, but for all the businesses on Battle Alley. At times, particularly when the alley is closed for events, whether it be wedding or a village event or whatever it is, there are businesses that are still open down there, but for the person walking by, if there are barricades across the street, they don't know what businesses are there. And so we are working on an alternate signage plan. I can't guarantee that it will be done within the next week or two because we are meeting with sign contractors. It will ultimately have to go back to the DDA board. So there are a few moving pieces to it, but that issue is being addressed, as well as the possible recommendation for reversal of traffic on Battle Alley. That's something that we're still in conversation with in conjunction with the Traffic Improvement Association. So we are looking at that. In relation to statements that Mr. Messler made regarding Chaos Volleyball, I can only tell you that we work very closely with Chaos, and they provide much more value than even what he relayed to the village itself and to the community center. And one thing that I appreciate as a former police officer is the role modeling that goes on. I mean, his group of parents and coaches spend hundreds of hours every year with his 60-plus players. The majority of those are from Holly, but regardless of where they're from, they spend hundreds of hours role modeling with the youth that are involved in that program. So from the village's standpoint, we value the Chaos Volleyball program as well as other coaches that spend time, but we have a lot of experience with Chaos, and so we value them in particular. And the last topic that I want to cover real briefly is there was a email and communication that went out to residents along College Street regarding the sale, potential sale of 111 College, which of course is the old high school, most recently owned by the River Church. In that communication that was given out both verbally and written, there was some false, erroneous information that was in there. To be kind, it would be, you would say that it was speculative, but I think it was more than that. I think it's dangerous information that was given out. Not only was it inaccurate, it's defamatory, slanderous, and potentially harmful to the developers that are working on that project. And I don't need to tell you that when persons enter into that arena of intentionally damaging projects with false information, there's a lot of liability that goes forward, not only to the individual, but to the municipality if the municipality is complicit, and also to the organization in which that individual is attached. In this particular case, the individual is a township board member. So I would just give caution that when projects, regardless of what it is, if it's not the truth, don't say it. Everybody has the right to free speech, but you don't have the right to intentionally defame somebody, be slanderous, or create a situation in which you injure another person's right to economically gain. And so just be very careful. That would be my only caution to everybody. This particular project, 111 College, as I talked at the last meeting, it does have a purchase agreement on it. They are set to close this week with the church, and so that property will be transferring ownership. The developers for that property have met with officials from Holly area schools, talked about historic preservation, talked about ways to honor the building, the site, the history of the school, the alumni that attended there, and so I think it has a lot of support from the school. As far as the community itself, I mean, or the residents that live right in that direct area, I mean, the developer's intention is not to demolish any part of the building. Now, there have been two other developers that have looked at that property within the last 12 months, and both of those prior developers were going to demolish up to 2/3 of the building. And in fact, the part that one of them was looking to demolish was the entire single-story section. Well, any of you that know anything about that property, that in fact is the oldest section. It is the most historical section. It was actually developed by a world-renowned architect that specialized in school. So from that aspect, I mean, staff, we haven't seen any site plans, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but no demolishment of that building can occur before it goes before the Planning Commission. And so we know that they've said that that's not their intention. They're not going to do it. We've had discussions with them that if that were their intention, that it may or may not be looked favorably upon by the Planning Commission. And so if they're going to invest money into it, they need to be very careful of investing because there is no guarantee. So, I mean, I have a lot of confidence in the Planning Commission in that they would evaluate that correctly. And then also with the neighbors, so that building has been vacant for many years now. So I think the church bought it over 10 years ago, and it had some limited use in that time. But if you've been around the exterior of the building, as well as gone inside and saw the interior, it is deteriorating rapidly. And that's what happens when, just like the Waterworks building, for example, if it's not used, it's not going to get better, and it's not going to get the same. It deteriorates. So, me personally, if I'm a neighbor in that lives on that street or in that surrounding area, and somebody's going to come in and completely refurbish the outside of it and re-landscape it and do everything that they plan on doing, I'm very happy about that. But that will be time down the road. You know, one of the allegations, you know, that was in that communication that went out was that this was all trying to be rushed through and under the table type of thing. That couldn't be the farthest from the truth. As you know, I spoke with council now. This is my second time speaking with you about this. I have also spoken with the Downtown Development Authority about this. I have met with the Holly Area Schools officials regarding this. I believe it's been discussed in the Historic District Commission. And so there is no secret about this building being sold. There is no secret about it is going to be developed. And there is no secret, I think, everybody can make that assumption that if that property is improved, it's not going to hurt the property values around it. It's going to benefit them. And I think this is just one of those things that shows the resurgence, the reinterest, and the revitalization in the village of Holly. I don't know about you, I'm pretty proud of where we've come over the last few years, but I'm even more excited about where we're going. So that's all my little soapbox. But I mean, I just, you know, I just urge everybody, you know, just be very careful when you're dealing with other people's reputations, other people's money, and the health of the overall community. Because all the boards and the commissions that the president and the council approves, people are on there for the right reason, or they wouldn't volunteer to be on there. And so, you know what, let's just take a step back, be supportive, and go through the process. And you know what, it's going to be a great result, whatever happens at that school. Nobody knows what the end result's going to be, except we know the building's going to be intact. We can have confidence that the developers said that, and that the Planning Commission, I believe that that will be their view on it also. So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Attorney?
Very briefly, I've just handled a number of miscellaneous matters over the last month, communications with Jerry and Debbie. I do expect, at least hope here, by your next meeting, with respect to the special assessment district that was discussed, I think, in the summer time. I'm just waiting on some additional information from Roe. I then can incorporate that information into a resolution that will go before you. Anytime you're dealing with the special assessment district, there's several steps in the process. A couple of public hearings, at least 3 resolutions. The initial resolution is just indicating preliminary intention to move forward with the project, but there needs to be some definition in that paperwork. And I'm waiting on Roe, and then I can have that together to you rather quickly. And as I said, hopefully, very soon, it'll be before you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bigger?
I don't really have anything this week. The auditors, although they're not on premises, I'm still working with them, submitting reports every week. Hopefully that will be wrapped up soon. And then I'm going to begin working on the CDGB application, which I will bring before you at the next council meeting.
Okay, great. Do any other department heads have anything? Ms. Hughes?
I just wanted to give a quick update. So I just came back from the Michigan Downtown Association annual conference that was in Bay City. It was last week, Wednesday and Thursday. And there was a lot of great information shared. And I just wanted to share a bit of a compliment. So one of the meetings that I attended, or the breakout sessions I attended, was about improving communication and kind of mending relationships with stakeholders and leadership. And so I thought this is good for communication, everybody kind of be on the same page. And in listening to some of the other city managers, some of the other DDA directors talking about some of the challenges that they've had with their community, where the city manager and the DDA director were kind of at odds, or the council was not supportive, or the DPW director, it was you know, you'd have to try and pull some strings to get something to happen. And they had a hard time making things work. And that's what this whole session was about, was what can you do to try to get everybody to be on the same page and work together. And I was kind of blown away so I spoke up and I said, I'm surprised that you have these issues. It's interesting to hear about other communities having these problems, because we don't. So after our council meeting, we get together and we kind of, you know, debrief and talk about things. The decisions that are made are kind of made together for the best of the community and thinking about the greater good. And so for these other people that have to butt heads and what can we do to try and butter up the DPW director to put up some signs or do something like that, we don't have those issues. And it was so nice to be able to speak up and say that. And they said, well, you're the lucky one. And I said, we really are. That, we're a small community, but I think because we communicate so well, and because we talk about what's best for everyone of spending tax dollars and things that it's going to benefit people, that I was able to kind of tout that. So that was a good thing. So I just wanted to share that compliment. And then also Ladies' Night Out is coming up November 10th. I just gave you your cards. So we have 10,000 cards that will be distributed around. I delivered some of them out. Domino's is going to put them on their pizza boxes. So we'll make sure to share the event really well. We have 41 sponsors. That's pretty exciting. So there's a lot of support in the community for this big event, too. So thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Cruikshank, planning?
Nothing on planning, just the meeting schedule. I believe it's next week.
Ms. Heupel?
We talked about the community center. And
got it taken care of.
Yep.
Mr. Shield, Haya?
Haya hasn't met since last meeting. Historic did, though, and we are meeting with the State Preservation Department regarding the historic boundaries. And if there's any other further questions, Mr. Cullis has volunteered to answer any further questions from there.
Oh, I think you got it. Parks?
We have not had a meeting since our last council meeting, and we are at recess until January.
ZBA? How about council comments?
One thing, I feel like even before Mr. Engelberg brought this up, I had it written down to request that the Charter and Ordinance Committee get together and discuss the parking ordinance for the wintertime. The second point to that was also, since it's Charter and Ordinances, I also feel that I was reaching out on Facebook and a few other avenues in the past week and a half about council pay. As it currently stands right now, it's $900 a year, and being an individual that puts at least over 1,000 hours a year into it, it's a volunteer position for me. I take a lot of time away to do this. I take time during my actual job at work to have phone calls and have discussions and emails, either with residents or administration and various other capacities. I never got into this to make any money. This is purely to give back to the village and also be a part of something that makes a difference, and to show that my children that you should be involved in your community and make the right decisions. On top of that, I'm also taking time away from them. So as it is now, the $900 after taxes, it buys a few extra Christmas presents. In reality, that's all I use it for. But I do think that council should be fairly compensated. It has not been changed since the, I believe, late 80s when it was put into our charter, 1987. So even at inflationary rates, that's $1,900 a year. So I do believe that it's at least time to talk about it and put it on a ballot for something. And so for those two reasons, I think we should schedule a Charter and Ordinance Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Cruikshank. Ms. Heupel?
No further comments.
Mr. Shield?
I have none.
Mr. Rankin?
Mr. Hoffman, I appreciate the work you've put in. As I spoke to you on the phone, I mentioned that the financial portion of your plan was going to be the make or break for me. We've had for 20 years people saying, "Oh, we'll get this person on board, or we can find that grant, or there might be grants, or these might be grants," and in that vote, it wasn't just me. I was also keeping in mind my fellow Parks Commissioners' interests and their views and their thoughts on the process, and our unanimous vote to demolish that building. So, while I appreciate it, I unfortunately don't think that it's the proper. I don't think it's the right plan for that site. So, but I do appreciate the time you've spent and the work you've put into it and the effort you've expended. And I am a little torn because some of these ideas, if they were to come to fruition, would be great. But I really think that I think the cost would outweigh the benefit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin.
Wait.
We'll have public comment in a bit.
Okay.
Mr. Alsop?
Talking to Mr. Hoffman about that building, you're the only one in all the years I lived in Holly that was real enough to stand up. John Love wanted to do it, but it takes money to do that. I know when I started on my old house, it took 39 years to do it. But it really did, 39 years to do that dump. And I know it's going to take you a long time to do that place, but if you could get money from people, I don't know what to tell you about it, because we all have to agree on it to get you to do it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Alsop. I myself, I'd like to, Mr. Mishler, welcome to Historical. I'd like to ask any members of the public, we have openings on planning, we have openings on historical. Please come down to the office, see Debbie, and fill out a public participation form. We need participation. Also, we have a cannabis study group, of which Mr. Mishler will be running. Any member of the public of the Village of Holly is welcome to come and participate. It's outside of the council. You can contact the office, you can contact Mr. Mishler, and that would be wonderful. That's it for me. Move on to public comments. You guys all know the rules. Once you're recognized by the chair, you have 4 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. Mr. Hoffman, you're already up. And
Bob Hoffman, I do want to thank all of you guys. I have to tell you how disappointed I am, though, because I've been told all along you want somebody to come and step up to the plate and save this building. Here I am. You told somebody that you don't want to just put your money into it, even though you have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of an asset that's owned by the taxpayers that nobody's touched for 30 years. You don't have money to really demolish, but you have money to build a pavilion over it. You know, you told somebody that we have to have end use for it. The end use is what you all, I talked to every one of you, and you all said it's some educational purposes, so I gave that to you. But it's not enough. And then I hear comments about, where was I 60 days ago? 60 days, that's just an arbitrary time in our lives. And here I am at the 11th hour, and I'm not sure what that means either. But I came here to do what you guys asked me to do, and you asked me to save it. Then you throw out comments about it's going to cost this much over the years. That's not fair. You know, I can come here with hard numbers and tell you what it's going to cost. And I could rehab the whole building for $90,000, and nobody will get anything done cheaper than I will get it done. And I've proven myself. It's not like I just fell off the turnip truck. I've been doing this for a long time. And so here I am. I'm willing to do what you want, but somehow that's not enough. So I guess I don't get it. So if you guys would give me the opportunity to call you, Chris, and Suzanne, and Dave, and you guys could give me some more input. I mean, I'm willing to go out there and raise money, but everybody has to have skin in the game. I don't own that building. I don't want to own the building. The taxpayers own it. You have a fiduciary responsibility. Like any other park, any other building, you have a responsibility to take care of it, and nobody's done it for 30 years, but I'm willing to do it. And there's a lot of people willing to help me, but I can't do it without you guys.
thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Engelberg.
Briefly, Tony Engelberg, 115 Cogshell. I wish Mark from Chaos Volleyball had not left. I would like to actually defend him, and I don't know who it was that tore down his organization. It must not have been at a meeting I was at. When I was involved with the center, it was basically at the time that his organization was coming in. And I saw as they were putting their plans, you know, a lot of times guys will come in and they'll have big dreams and not a lot of follow through. Mark is about as extremely dedicated towards his program with volleyball and to Holly as anybody that I've come into contact with. His professionalism, his dedication, his follow through should be commended, and I have no doubt that he did and has done some of the things within that building that he said he did. So, like I said, I don't know who said or where he heard or who said those things that apparently somebody was saying to denigrate him and his organization. I can tell you, from firsthand, we are lucky to have Chaos Volleyball in Holly. And, quite honestly, somebody like him would be the kind of person you guys should be looking at to run the place, to run the building itself. So, thank you.
Mr. Potts?
Richard Putz, 1214 Bay Court, Holly. As a member of the Historic Commission, we had a meeting with Mr. Huffman and John Love, discussed this whole plan about saving the Waterworks Committee. What good is the Historic Commission if the council will not take our recommendation? Mr. Shields can back us up. Mr. Cullis can back us up. We went through this. We are in favor of letting Mr. Huffman go through with his process, and it's worth saving historically. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Potts. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Joe Hutchins, 419 Thomas Street. Just two brief comments tonight. One is about, I was on council from 92 to 96. And also we looked at the Waterworks building back then, and I think there was reports on structural foundation worthiness of that building. And I think it should be gone and looked at before. Because like any other rebuilding of a building, including the barn on North Holly Road, a building is only as good as its foundation, whether it's my 1969 house or an old barn or the Waterworks. And to not look at the foundation first, your building is only good as your foundation. If you put a roof on it, lipstick on a pig. That's all I can say about that comment. The other thing is I'd like to thank Tony Brinker for her dedication and to the community through the Carl Richter Center, and also a little bit of information, her dedication and involvement in the community for the Junior Broncos Football League through Tally Township Parks and Recs. I'd like to thank you as a resident and as a park commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Missler?
I'm going to avoid all the controversial subjects. Joe Mishler, 620 Academy Road. I would like to say, I noticed on your agenda that you're going into a closed session on two things. I've already spoken on the first one, but I'd also like to make a comment on the village clerk treasurer. I think the person that you have in that spot right now is doing a really great job. She's been very helpful in a lot of different ways. And I think it's a pleasure to work with someone who really cares and is concerned about the community and is willing to help people out on various projects. And I hope that you continue with her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Missler. Mr. Smith, did you have your hand up? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Tim Smith, 14525 North Holly Road. I was a historical contractor that did renovations in downtown Detroit in the early 80s. We worked on a Broadway Randolph project, which was the facades of an entire block. At the end of 6 months, all of us contractors finished. We went down and had a lunch. We added up how much our bids were to do that project. It was $760,000. 1 week later, we saw in the Detroit News that the city of Detroit paid $42 million to the contractor that got their bids from us. Now, that has something to say about who gets the bids and how they get done. And it's the direct people who are in the contracting business who can get the bids and get the price. And if somebody sees the government involved, they jack the price sky high. And I'm pretty sure that's what's been happening here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Love?
John Love. It's kind of amazing to watch this claims we're going to make a beautiful park out of this place when we're going to tear it down. That's a joke. We don't even have a name sign on the river that goes through town, the Shiawassee. We have a park that's right next to the dam. There's no signage. People don't even know it's there. You probably don't either. Fine Arboretum. He donated it to the city or the village. So we're right on top of everything, and this is going to be the turning point. We're going to get rid of this place, and the parks are going to look beautiful. That's great. But you can't even do the basics. You can't even put a sign up that you can see from the road that there's a canoe launch there. You can't even see the river on the other side because the trees are grown over. But we got parks. If this place was finished with a roof and the structure, it would look fine. And you wouldn't have to even go inside. Drive it. You could have Santa Claus visit there. You could do things that it's the Waterworks Park, and it's not going to cost $1 zillion every year. You put the roof on, you take care of the cleaning it up, and it would look as good as it would. You don't need this miracle of $50 zillion on the thing. It's not going to cost that every year. It's a landmark, and to do this is just unconscionable. But let's move on. We're going to have signs. I want to see a sign on the river. It's basic. And a canoe launch. Basic stuff. But no, we're on top of everything, and we don't want to bother with this deal. The other one I'd like to talk about is we're up to $100,000 now on legal fees on this water deal. What's the work product? You should look at the case as our village attorney. That would be the responsible thing to do. You just sit there and let them spend $100,000. You should have a review. If you're concerned about money, that $100,000 is a lot of money. What do we got for it? Therapy. That's all it is. What else we got here? I can see how you spend a lot of time on all of this as far as getting a pay raise, but I appreciate the time you put in, but the results need to be results. And Hoffman's stupid enough to try and deal with this and do something that'll fix it up. We could do it for nothing. I offered to do it for nothing. But no, we didn't want to do that. We're going to take care of it because we've got a great idea. We're going to throw money into demolishing it. So, thank you. Let's start thinking.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Ms. Clevin?
Sandra Clevin, 1011 Hubble Drive. I spent a Sunday afternoon over at Waterworks Park with John Love a couple weekends ago. He was doing sketches of the building. We were taking measurements of the building. Part of it, I was just standing around watching, and Linda and I were talking. And there's a lovely wooden bridge, and we were walking across that. Parks doesn't even maintain that bridge. It hasn't been refinished in a long time. So if Parks is really worried about it, they need to do something about that bridge. Got a splinter from it. I mean, you know, if kids are running across there barefoot or people are walking across barefoot because they're taking their canoes, and there were a lot of people that day going out canoeing because it was a very nice day in the fall. But if Parks is really concerned about it, look at what you have out there and start taking care of that first.
Thank you. Do we have any further public comment? No? We'll close. Mr. Walker?
No, if you're closed with public comment, I was just going to say as you move on to new business item number 3, I would ask council to consider including Ms. Hughes in that closed session as the community center is supervised out of the manager's and assistant manager's office.
Yes, sir. I have no problem with that. Would we need to vote on that?
Yeah, I need a motion to enter into closed session to discuss items number 3 and 4.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. May we take a short recess?
Has to be roll call.
Before you do, yes, that needs a roll call vote. If I can just speak to procedure, because neither one of those agenda items requires my presence or involves me. So I'll leave when you break, with your permission. But you're allowed to go into closed session to discuss that, but only at the employee's request. So I assume both employees are requesting that.
Yes, sir. And
at any time they can change their mind. And if they change their mind, you must proceed in closed session. So I just wanted to remind you of that before I left. And the last reminder is just a roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Roll call.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Elsa. Yes. Cruikshank.
Yes.
Heifel.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes. Let's take 5 minutes.
Yes, let's.
It's 9:01 now.
I got a tinkle. You got a smoke.
Now I'm going to grab me a little chop.
Interested in getting it done and getting out of here. Interested in getting it done and getting out of here.
Maybe. I do plan on making it. Nicole was in a car accident today.